Before there was laughter, before there was chaos, there was a fishbowl. Inside it swam a small orange fish with a gentle smile and eyes that reflected the whole room. He didn't know what the world was yet, only that it shimmered beyond the glass. His name was Darwin. Long before he grew legs, long before he learned to speak, he loved. That was his first act, his first truth. Love came to him as naturally as breathing, and it would remain the single force that defined his life. In a show built from absurdity, Darwin Watterson became its still point, the quiet current beneath the noise, the one who felt deeply enough to keep the world from collapsing into meaninglessness. Darwin's story begins in a miracle disguised as a joke, a pet who grew a soul because his family cared too much. Somewhere between the feeding and the laughter, affection turned into creation. That's the hidden poetry of the amazing world of Gumball. It never explains how Darwin evolved. It just tells us that love did it. The universe doesn't gift him consciousness through science or destiny, but through connection. He becomes a person because someone looked at him and saw more than a pet. That single act of recognition transforms him from object to being. And from that moment on, Darwin's existence becomes proof that love is creative, that caring for something can literally bring it to life. When he first steps out of the bowl, dripping water across the floor, the world expands in all directions. Every color is too bright, every sound too sharp, every texture a revelation. He learns not through instruction, but through curiosity, tasting, touching, feeling his way into reality. Unlike Gumball, who barrels through life chasing experience, Darwin drifts through it with wonder. Everything is new to him, and because of that, everything matters. His early days are filled with tiny miracles, learning to breathe air, to walk, to speak, and each one is met with gratitude. That's the essence of Darwin's philosophy. Gratitude as awareness. The world doesn't owe him understanding. It offers him discovery. Gumball, impulsive and wild, quickly claims him as a brother, and in that bond, Darwin finds direction. If Gumball represents motion, Darwin represents meaning. Gumball tests the world's limits. Darwin reminds him why it's worth testing. Their relationship isn't balance in the logical sense, it's emotional equilibrium. Gumball pushes, Darwin pulls. Gumball explodes, Darwin absorbs. The two of them together form a closed circuit of chaos and compassion, one constantly saving the other from himself. In Elmore's physics, where logic collapses daily, that relationship becomes its only law. What makes Darwin extraordinary isn't that he's kind, it's that he chooses kindness again and again, even when it hurts. His empathy isn't passive, it's active labor. In episodes like The Words and the Bros, we see him torn between honesty and comfort, between truth and gentleness. He tries to protect feelings until they become heavy enough to sink him. But even when he's overwhelmed, he never stops caring. His sensitivity is both shield and wound, and through it he teaches a quiet lesson. To feel deeply is to risk pain. But it's the only way to stay human. Darwin experiences morality like a tide. He doesn't follow rules because they're written. He follows feelings because they're real. When he sees suffering, he moves toward it instinctively. When he sees joy, he magnifies it. His morality flows from empathy rather than authority, and that makes it flexible, alive. In the plan and the hero, he often becomes the conscience of the group, the one who pauses before the next disaster, whose voice cuts through the noise with calm sincerity. But the show never turns him into a saint. He gets angry, jealous, even petty. The difference is that he always comes back to love. For Darwin, forgiveness isn't an ending, it's maintenance. There's a small, almost invisible scene in The Origins Part 2 when Darwin, still part fish, looks at Gumball through the glass and smiles. That moment contains his whole philosophy. He isn't longing to escape, he's content with connection. Even before he can speak, he loves without condition. That's why his eventual transformation feels natural. When he grows legs and joins the family, it isn't a rebellion against nature, it's nature completing itself. The ocean has given rise to empathy, the current has found a new form. Darwin's body changes, but his essence remains water, adaptable, transparent, reflective. As he grows older, his innocence deepens rather than fades. He begins to understand irony, cruelty, and the strange indifference of the universe, yet none of it hardens him. Where Gumball turns cynicism into comedy, Darwin turns it into compassion. He feels sorry for the world, even when it mocks him. That's the quiet strength of his character. He refuses to let awareness destroy gentleness. Innocence for him isn't ignorance. It's a conscious choice to remain open. In a world where self-protection masquerades as maturity, Darwin's openness becomes a form of wisdom. The household around him often treats emotions as noise. Richard's laughter too loud, Nicole's anger too sharp, Gumball's moods volcanic. Darwin absorbs all of it, turning chaos into calm. He listens when no one else does. He mediates, apologizes, reminds them that beneath their differences, they still love each other. It's easy to underestimate that role, but emotionally, he's the gravitational center of the family. Remove him, and everything spins apart. In The Origins, the family rescues him. In every episode afterward, he rescues them. Darwin's faith in goodness isn't naive. It's radical. He believes in people even after they fail him. When others see monsters, he sees pain. When others demand punishment, he offers understanding. This faith is tested, constantly, in friends who betray him, in systems that mock him, in absurd rules that make no sense, but he keeps choosing trust. That choice gives his character a subtle tragedy. The world he loves can't always love him back, yet that imbalance doesn't break him. It defines his philosophy. He accepts imperfection as part of love's structure. To him, disappointment isn't evidence that kindness doesn't work. It's proof that it's still needed. In Elmore, where logic collapses and consequence resets, Darwin's consistency becomes spiritual. He embodies the idea that emotion itself can be a stabilizing force. When everything else resets, feeling remains. His joy, his empathy, his laughter, they outlive the punchlines. And because of that, Darwin becomes the emotional memory of the series, the thread connecting its disconnected moments. You could erase the plot, and he would still carry its heart. If Gumball is the philosophy of absurdity, Darwin is the philosophy of compassion. He turns chaos into harmony simply by perceiving it kindly. That doesn't mean he fixes everything, it means he chooses to see beauty in the broken. Even when he cries, there's a kind of peace in it. And his tears are not despair, but understanding. He knows that pain and love are two shapes of the same current, each giving meaning to the other. By the end of the series, Darwin no longer feels like a supporting character. He feels like the conscience of the universe, a gentle reminder that existence is emotional before it is logical. His faith in connection, his willingness to forgive, his unshakable joy. These are not traits of a child, but of a sage disguised as one. He shows us that empathy is not weakness, that innocence can survive knowledge, and that love, when practiced consistently, becomes its own kind of intelligence. So, when the noise of Elmore quiets and the lights of the Watterson house dim, Darwin remains awake for a moment longer, smiling into the dark. He has no grand answers, only gratitude that he got to live, to feel, to love. In the end, the miracle isn't that a fish grew legs. It's that a creature born from water learned to carry the calm of the ocean inside himself, wherever he goes. Innocence is often misunderstood. People mistake it for ignorance, for the fragile naivety that collapses under pressure. But Darwin Watterson redefines it. His innocence is not emptiness, it's openness. It's the ability to see the world without building walls against it. In Elmore, where everything is absurd and unpredictable, Darwin's innocence becomes his greatest strength. It allows him to move through chaos without bitterness, to absorb the world's contradictions without losing his shape. It's not that he doesn't understand how strange or unfair things can be. It's that he chooses to meet them with trust anyway. That choice, repeated quietly in every episode, becomes his philosophy. Darwin wasn't born innocent, he stayed innocent. There's a difference. When he first steps out of his bowl, blinking in the brightness of the living room, his world was simple: water, family, laughter. Everything beyond that was potential. He didn't inherit cynicism, didn't learn fear from stories or warnings. His first lessons came through love, and that shaped how he interpreted everything that followed. For Darwin, the universe began as a kind gesture, and he never stopped believing it could be one again. When others see randomness, he sees intention. When others assume cruelty, he assumes confusion. In this way, his innocence isn't blindness, it's a form of mercy. Gumball and Darwin experience the same world in opposite ways. Gumball confronts it. Darwin receives it. Gumball tries to fix the universe by fighting with it, reasoning with it, mocking it. Darwin listens. He absorbs before he reacts. When Gumball stumbles into another mess, hurt pride, broken plans, self-inflicted chaos, Darwin doesn't respond with scolding or judgment. He offers space. That's his method. He makes room for other people's emotions until they can make sense of them. He's the embodiment of patience in a world allergic to it. And that patience isn't passive, it's deeply active. It's the quiet strength of someone who knows that understanding takes time. Episodes like The Words and the Bros show Darwin's innocence tested. In The Words, he learns that honesty, even when meant kindly, can hurt. He has to balance truth and tenderness, discovering that love sometimes means silence. In The Bros, he tries to mimic Gumball's wildness, thinking that being cool means being careless, and ends up feeling lost in his own skin. Both episodes teach him that purity doesn't mean perfection. It means staying true to your core even after mistakes. He doesn't protect his innocence by avoiding the world. He protects it by returning to himself after each fall. That's Darwin's quiet miracle. He participates in chaos without becoming it. He doesn't detach from pain, but he refuses to let it define him. When his heart breaks, he cries without shame. When he's angry, he admits it. When he's confused, he asks. He never hides behind irony or detachment. In a world obsessed with being clever, Darwin is brave enough to be sincere. His vulnerability is revolutionary. It's what allows him to see others clearly. Because he doesn't wear armor, people can see themselves reflected in him. That's why Gumball trusts him, why Nicole softens around him, why even the strangest citizens of Elmore respond to his kindness. He makes people feel safe by being unguarded. There's a purity to the way Darwin experiences joy. For him, laughter isn't a reaction. It's an act of faith. He laughs because he believes the world, despite everything, wants to be good. That joy has power. It's contagious, disarming even. In the party, when social insecurities threaten to ruin Gumball's night, Darwin diffuses it all by simply dancing without self-consciousness. His innocence turns embarrassment into invitation. He doesn't resist awkwardness, he redeems it. Through him, the show teaches that joy doesn't come from control, but from surrender. From the willingness to look foolish, to let go, to be fully alive. But innocence also comes with its shadows. In the hero, Darwin's pure admiration for Richard blinds him to his flaws. He wants so badly to see goodness in everyone that he overlooks when they cause harm. This is the cost of his empathy. Loving everyone equally means he sometimes forgets to protect himself. Yet even that mistake becomes part of his wisdom. He learns that love needs boundaries, that kindness isn't the same as submission. Each time he's hurt, he grows more discerning, but never more cynical. His innocence evolves, becoming something mature and aware. There's a scene in The Origins when young Darwin, newly walking, looks at his reflection in a puddle and tilts his head, studying his own face. It's a quiet moment, almost nothing, but it captures everything about him. He sees himself not with vanity, but with curiosity. He doesn't fear what he sees, he simply wonders. That's how he approaches existence itself, with wonder instead of fear. And that wonder is what keeps him light, even in darkness. When the world collapses into absurdity, Darwin doesn't resist it. He just keeps floating. His innocence also gives him a kind of moral intuition. While Gumball often intellectualizes morality, arguing, rationalizing, debating, Darwin just feels it. He knows right from wrong not because someone told him, but because he can sense harmony or its absence. When he sees cruelty, something in him recoils. When he sees love, he expands. This emotional sensitivity guides him better than any rulebook ever could. In The Limit, when the family descends into chaos over a free toy, Darwin's disappointment carries more moral weight than any speech. His quiet sadness becomes a mirror for everyone's behavior, pulling them back to decency. That's the quiet authority of innocence. It reminds others of what they've forgotten. Darwin's philosophy is built on trust, but it's not blind faith. He trusts because he understands that distrust destroys connection. It's a gamble he's willing to take. To live innocently is to risk being hurt again and again, and to keep risking it anyway. Darwin embodies that risk every time he forgives Gumball, every time he comforts Nicole, every time he believes in someone who doesn't deserve it yet. The world keeps proving his optimism foolish, and he keeps loving it anyway. That persistence is what transforms his innocence into strength. There's also something cosmic about his purity. In a universe like Elmore's, fragmented, inconsistent, self-aware, Darwin represents coherence through emotion. He doesn't need the world to make sense, because his heart does. His internal compass points always towards care, and that stability gives the show its emotional foundation. When everything else falls apart, the timeline, the logic, the animation, Darwin's kindness remains unchanged. He's the element of continuity in a story that otherwise refuses to stay still. And yet, even for him, innocence is a choice, renewed daily. In episodes like The Disaster and The Rerun, when the world literally breaks apart, Darwin's faith wavers. He feels fear, confusion, loss. But unlike Gumball, who reacts with defiance, Darwin reacts with love. He reaches out, holds on, believes that affection itself can rewrite the world. And somehow, in Elmore, it often does. His innocence is not ignorance of suffering, it's defiance against it. To stay kind in a world that rewards cruelty is the ultimate rebellion. The beauty of Darwin's innocence is that it doesn't depend on the outcome. He doesn't need proof that goodness works to keep practicing it. When people laugh at him, when they take advantage of him, when kindness fails to fix things, he still chooses it. Because for Darwin, being good isn't a strategy, it's identity. He doesn't do it for reward. He does it because he can't imagine existing any other way. That's why, even when he makes mistakes, he always returns to grace. His forgiveness isn't moral superiority, it's his natural state. There's something deeply comforting in that. In a world obsessed with irony and detachment, Darwin reminds us that sincerity still matters, that we can look at the world and choose to see hope instead of decay, that we can care deeply without being fools. His innocence, like light reflected on water, flickers but never fades. It changes with the angle of life but never disappears. It's resilient precisely because it's gentle. By the time you follow Darwin through enough of Elmore's madness, you realize that his philosophy isn't childish at all. It's advanced. It's what happens when someone refuses to let experience destroy empathy. He has seen too much to be naive, and yet he remains open. That's what maturity really is. Not cynicism, but clarity. And Darwin, in his quiet way, embodies that clarity. At the end of a long day, when the house finally grows still, Darwin sits by the window and watches the night ripple over Elmore. Somewhere out there, chaos is still happening. Cars exploding, universes bending, logic breaking. But here, in this small pocket of calm, he smiles. He knows he can't stop the madness, but he also knows it's not stronger than love. The world can twist itself into any shape it wants. He'll still see beauty in it. That's the essence of his innocence. Not the denial of darkness, but the faith that light will always find a way through. Darwin Watterson doesn't think through the world, he feels through it. His emotions are not reactions, they're instruments. Every sound, every colour, every moment in Elmore ripples through him, like waves through water. His heart is his compass, and his sensitivity is both his gift and his challenge. If Gumball sees the world as a stage, Darwin experiences it as a current, something you can't control, but can learn to move with. That's why, when the world becomes too loud, Darwin doesn't fight it. He listens to its rhythm, and somehow, in that listening, he finds harmony. Darwin's emotions are vast and immediate, but they aren't random. They flow through him with an honesty that the rest of Elmore often avoids. He doesn't hide how he feels, doesn't disguise sadness with jokes or anger with sarcasm. His transparency makes him vulnerable, but it also makes him real. When Darwin cries, it's never just pain, it's release. His tears are a form of language, his laughter a kind of prayer. Every emotion he expresses is communication, not confession. He doesn't perform feelings, he embodies them. That's what makes him such a strange presence in the Watterson household. Everyone else filters emotion through extremes. Nicole's fury, Richard's oblivious joy, Gumball's theatrical melodrama. Darwin simply feels without filter. He doesn't amplify or suppress. He flows. In the limit, when Nicole's anger spirals into chaos, Darwin's fear doesn't paralyze him. It grounds him. He becomes the voice that breaks the cycle, reminding his mother that love, not victory, is what holds them together. His sensitivity saves the family, not by overpowering emotion, but by humanizing it. Darwin's relationship with emotion is deeply physical. He feels joy as warmth in his chest, sadness as heaviness behind his eyes. The animators often exaggerate his expressions, his face melting with happiness. his eyes flooding instantly with tears. And those moments, while comedic, are spiritual in their honesty. There's no separation between what he feels and what he shows. That's Darwin's quiet truth. Emotions are not meant to be hidden. They are meant to pass through you, like water, changing shape as they go. In the words, his emotional awareness becomes both burden and revelation. He discovers that honesty can hurt, that truth without empathy is cruelty. The lesson is not to suppress emotion, but to refine it, to feel deeply while speaking gently. It's the beginning of Darwin's moral education, the realization that emotion has power, that kindness is not just softness, but discipline. From that point on, Darwin becomes a student of feeling, not in the way someone studies a subject, but in the way someone learns to breathe. There's something aquatic in how Darwin experiences empathy. He doesn't distinguish between his emotions and those of others. He absorbs them until they become his own. When Gumball feels shame, Darwin's cheeks flush too. When Nicole grows tired, Darwin slows his speech. When someone in class cries, Darwin's eyes well up without understanding why. It's not imitation, it's attunement. Like the ocean mirroring the sky, he reflects everything around him. That level of empathy can be exhausting, but it's also transcendent. It's what allows him to connect to everyone, even those the rest of Elmore misunderstands. That connection extends beyond people. Darwin feels for things. In the castle, when Richard's childish fantasy collapses, Darwin grieves the loss of innocence as if it were his own. In the safety, he worries not just about danger, but about how fear itself harms the spirit. Even objects in the house, the TV, a balloon, a plant, receive his care. To Darwin, emotion isn't limited to sentient beings. It's the invisible thread that binds all things together. That's why Elmore, in its strange way, responds to him. The world bends toward Darwin's kindness, reshaping itself around his empathy. But being made of feeling comes with a cost. There are moments when Darwin's compassion overwhelms him, when the emotions he carries for others start to drown his own. In the awkwardness, he tries to comfort everyone in a conflict until he becomes the center of it. In the advice, he bends over backwards to help Gumball fix mistakes that can't be fixed. His desire to keep peace can sometimes silence his own needs. It's a subtle form of self-erasure, the dark side of empathy. He's so busy feeling for others that he forgets to feel for himself. Yet, even in exhaustion, he never grows bitter. He rests, regathers, and forgives. His heart doesn't harden, it heals by returning to openness. If you look closely, you can see that Darwin's emotional intelligence isn't learned, it's instinctive. He doesn't read psychology books or rehearse empathy. It's part of his nature, flowing from his origin as a creature of water. Water doesn't resist, it adapts. It takes the shape of whatever contains it, but never loses its essence. That's Darwin's secret. He can enter any emotional space, joy, grief, confusion, and exist there without being consumed. He feels everything but is not destroyed by feeling. He's fluid enough to bend and clear enough to reflect. In The Hero, when Gumball's attempt to impress Richard goes too far, Darwin becomes the emotional translator between father and son. He doesn't pick sides, he bridges them. His understanding of love isn't hierarchical, it's circular. Everyone gives, everyone receives. He knows that connection isn't about winning arguments, but about staying connected despite them. His tears in that episode are not weakness, but evidence of presence. He refuses to detach. In Elmore, that's the rarest courage of all. What's fascinating about Darwin is that his emotional world is never static. He evolves not by suppressing emotions, but by deepening his relationship with them. Early on, he cries over small things: a lost toy, a misunderstanding, a broken sandwich. Later, his emotions widen in scope. He begins to feel for the world itself, for the strangeness of existence, the fleeting nature of joy, the fragility of goodness. In the origins, his wonder is physical. In the disaster, it becomes metaphysical. His emotional range stretches from the personal to the cosmic, and yet he never loses touch with the everyday. That duality, intimacy, and vastness is what makes him feel so human. Darwin's empathy also carries a quiet philosophy of acceptance. He doesn't see emotions as problems to solve. When Gumball is angry, Darwin doesn't tell him not to be. He sits beside him until the anger fades. When someone is sad, he doesn't rush to cheer them up. He simply stays. His silence speaks what words can't. The pain doesn't always need fixing, only witnessing. That's why people heal around him. His presence gives them permission to feel. In a world that confuses distraction with healing, Darwin reminds us that peace begins with acknowledgement. Even when Darwin's emotions turn inward, when he doubts himself or feels unseen, he treats those feelings with the same kindness he offers others. He doesn't shame himself for being sensitive. He knows that sensitivity is his nature, not his flaw. There's a scene in The Bros where he tries to mimic Gumball's recklessness and ends up breaking down, realizing that pretending to be someone else only disconnects him from his truth. The moment he admits that, his peace returns. That's the self-awareness of a soul that understands emotion not as weakness, but as identity. Darwin's emotional depth also shapes his spirituality, though the show never names it as such. In episodes like The Void or The Disaster, where reality itself fractures, Darwin reacts not with existential panic, but with compassion. He worries not about survival, but about meaning. Even at the end of the world, he's concerned for others. That instinct to comfort rather than control makes him a kind of quiet mystic. His belief that love matters more than logic feels almost sacred. It's the emotional core of Elmore's otherwise absurd universe. Perhaps that's why Darwin never seems fully bound by Elmore's chaos. While others are defined by their archetypes, the hero, the parent, the fool, Darwin remains something fluid, something elemental. He moves between roles easily. Son, brother, friend, moral compass, fool, philosopher. Each identity flows into the next. He's the emotional equivalent of water finding every crack, every hidden space, turning even brokenness into connection. And yet, for all his openness, Darwin's emotions are not endless vulnerability. He has limits. When someone truly betrays his trust, when kindness is mocked too cruelly, there's a rare glimpse of anger in him, a flash of heat beneath all that calm. In The Gift, when his generosity is taken advantage of, we see him tremble with frustration. But even then, his anger is clean. It doesn't poison. It passes through him and leaves clarity behind. His emotions, even the painful ones, never stain him. They cleanse. That's what makes Darwin so luminous in a world that thrives on irony. He proves that emotional honesty doesn't make you fragile. It makes you resilient. Because when you stop fearing your own feelings, the world can't use them against you. Darwin's peace is not absence of feeling, it's mastery of motion. Like the ocean, he can rage, reflect, and rest, all without ceasing to be himself. In the quiet hours when the family has fallen asleep and the moonlight glimmers through the window, Darwin sometimes lies awake, eyes open, listening to the hum of the world. The sounds of Elmore, soft wind, distant laughter, the low buzz of streetlights blend together like music. He feels all of it, every note, and in that feeling, there's understanding. The world, for all its confusion, still sings. He doesn't need to translate it. It's enough to listen. Because for Darwin Watterson, emotion isn't the opposite of reason. It's the rhythm of life itself, the current that carries him forward again and again into the unknown. When Darwin first pulled himself out of his bowl and set a foot on the floor, it wasn't just a miracle, it was a philosophy in motion. That first step was the beginning of everything that defined him. Curiosity, courage, vulnerability, and wonder. It was clumsy, unplanned, and beautiful. The world outside the glass wasn't safe, but it was alive, and Darwin chose to enter it anyway. He didn't ask for assurance that he'd survive, didn't calculate his odds or wait for permission. He saw something he didn't understand and reached toward it. That moment, simple, silent, and small, is the essence of his philosophy. Movement as faith, exploration as love. Every step Darwin takes after that first one carries the echo of it. Each act of kindness, each apology, each risk of trust is another foot leaving the safety of water. In Elmore, where gravity and logic can collapse at any moment, walking is not a given. It's a decision. For Darwin, walking isn't just locomotion, it's participation. He doesn't walk away from the world. He walks into it over and over again, no matter how often it breaks. In The Origins Part 2, there's a moment when young Darwin, still new to legs, looks up at Gumball, trembling with excitement and fear, and says his first words. His voice shakes, uncertain but sincere. That tremor carries more meaning than any speech. It's the sound of consciousness arriving. Darwin learns language the same way he learns motion, through connection. His first word isn't about himself, it's about reaching someone else. That's how he learns everything. Not through instruction, but through relationship. Every lesson in Darwin's life begins as love. Learning to walk for Darwin isn't just physical adaptation, it's emotional expansion. As he learns to move through the world, he learns to move through people, to navigate feelings, to balance closeness and independence, to understand that love can be both grounding and liberating. Each new place he explores teaches him something about himself. Every hallway, classroom, and backyard becomes a kind of spiritual terrain. The miracle of walking is that it lets him touch the unknown, and Darwin has never feared the unknown. His wonder protects him from cynicism, the way armor protects other heroes from harm. Gumball is there for every step of it. To Gumball, Darwin's growth is magic. To Darwin, it's gratitude. He never forgets that his life is a gift. In The Origins, we see that his evolution was born from love. His family's love gave him the strength to change. So when he takes that first walk beside Gumball, he isn't just imitating him, he's honoring him. His footsteps are echoes of affection, a way of saying thank you without words. That gratitude becomes a quiet rhythm in everything Darwin does. He helps, forgives, and listens because he remembers what it feels like to be seen for the first time. Darwin's walking mirrors his emotional development. Awkward at first, then graceful, but never mechanical. He doesn't hide his stumbles. He trips, laughs, gets back up. Every fall becomes part of his rhythm. That's why his mistakes never feel tragic. They feel alive. His ability to turn failure into play, pain into empathy, and motion into music defines him. It's not about mastery, it's about movement. For Darwin, stand still is the only kind of failure. In The Kids, when Darwin and Gumball realize they're growing up, there's a quiet tension between excitement and fear. Gumball sees maturity as loss. Darwin sees it as discovery. He doesn't resist change because he understands that transformation is a continuation of walking. It's just another step. He doesn't measure progress by distance, but by awareness. Each day he feels more, sees more, understands more, and that's enough. The show never treats his growth as dramatic evolution. It's a soft, continuous flow, like water learning new shapes. Darwin's relationship with space reflects that. He isn't a conqueror of environments, he adapts to them. In the Watterson home, he glides through the chaos, filling gaps where patience is missing. At school, he moves between social circles, finding harmony where conflict lives. Even in episodes like the awkwardness or the party, where he feels out of place, he eventually finds his balance by letting go of performance. He belongs everywhere because he doesn't demand that anywhere change to fit him. He brings peace instead of control. That's his walk. Soft but steady, humble but transformative. His literal evolution from a creature of water to a being of land is mirrored in how he navigates emotion. In water, he was carried by currents. On land, he learns to create his own. Walking requires trust in gravity, just as caring requires trust in others. The act of standing upright in a chaotic world becomes a spiritual metaphor. To walk is to believe the ground will hold you. Darwin never stops believing that. Even when the ground shakes, he finds balance not by resisting motion, but by moving with it. That's why Darwin doesn't crave control. Gumball plans, plots, and schemes because he fears uncertainty. Darwin surrenders to it. He walks without knowing the destination and finds meaning along the way. This makes him seem naive, but it's actually wisdom. His willingness to move through uncertainty is what keeps him free. He trusts that life, no matter how absurd, will reveal something worth loving. It's the same faith that got him out of the bowl in the first place. There's a poetic symmetry to how Darwin's legs never quite erase his origins. He may walk, but his essence is still water. The way he moves, the softness in his gestures, the flowing rhythm of his speech, all carry the memory of the ocean. He doesn't abandon what he was, he integrates it. That's why Darwin feels both human and otherworldly. He's not trying to escape his past, he's expanding it. Each new experience adds a layer to his being, but none replace the old ones. His walk is cumulative, not linear. In the limit and the roots, we see Darwin's compassion extend into moral motion. He doesn't just walk to explore, he walks to connect. When others retreat, he approaches. When others give up, he advances. His instinct is always toward closeness. Even when hurt, he moves forward. Not out of denial, but because he refuses to let pain define the path. For Darwin, every step is a chance to reconnect, to try again, to believe that love still exists on the next horizon. That optimism gives Elmore its warmth. But movement isn't always easy for him. There are days when he feels small, when the weight of empathy slows him down. In the advice, he's overwhelmed by trying to solve Gumball's endless problems. He walks in circles, literally and emotionally, trying to make sense of things that have no solution. Yet even in exhaustion, his default is hope. He pauses, breathes, then keeps moving. His resilience isn't born from strength, it's born from acceptance. He accepts that some things can't be fixed, but that motion itself can be healing. Darwin's ability to keep walking after pain is what makes him quietly heroic. He doesn't need grand victories to prove growth. His triumphs are small, forgiving someone who hurt him, admitting when he's wrong, choosing joy again after sadness. These moments may seem mundane, but in Elmore, a world built on cycles of chaos, they're revolutionary. Every time he gets back up, he's rewriting what survival means. For him, to live is to walk again, no matter how many times you fall. When you think about it, Darwin's legs are symbols of evolution, yes, but also of empathy. They're extensions of his desire to reach the world. They let him meet others halfway, to bridge the gap between creature and companion, between self and other. Every step he takes is a handshake with existence. That's why his walk feels sacred. It's a form of worship, an acknowledgement that the world, however strange, deserves to be touched with care. By the end of the series, when Darwin walks beside Gumball through another sunset, their movements are perfectly synchronized. They've grown together, tripped together, learned together. The rhythm between them is not rehearsed, but earned. You can tell they've spent years matching steps, adjusting pace, waiting for each other. That's love turned into motion, not the rush to reach a goal, but the patience to walk beside someone through every detour. In a way, Darwin never stops learning to walk. He's still that little fish stepping out of his bowl, curious about the world, unsure but hopeful. Every day in Elmore is another step into uncertainty, another dance between fear and faith. And maybe that's the point. To walk isn't to arrive, it's to stay in motion, to stay curious, to stay alive. Darwin's life is proof that movement itself can be meaning, that to keep stepping forward no matter how strange the world becomes is its own kind of wisdom. When night falls and the house grows still, you can almost imagine Darwin standing by the window, one hand on the glass, looking out at the streetlights flickering like distant stars. He remembers the feeling of water against his fins, the sound of bubbles, the safety of stillness. Then he looks down at his legs, smiles, and takes another small step. It doesn't lead anywhere special. It doesn't have to. The act of walking is enough. The act of choosing the world again is enough. And that's how Darwin Watterson keeps teaching, without ever needing to speak. That love, curiosity, and motion are all the same thing. Kindness is easy when the world is kind back. It's much harder when the world is loud, absurd, and unfair. When chaos keeps undoing your calm. When laughter turns into shouting. When the people you love take more than they give. Darwin Watterson knows that kind of world. He lives in it every day. His kindness isn't the naive generosity of someone untouched by hardship. It's the steady choice of someone who has seen how cruel the world can be, and still decides to stay gentle. It's not softness. It's strength in disguise. The kind of strength that doesn't show off. The kind that holds. From the outside, Darwin's kindness seems effortless. He smiles, forgives, listens, and comforts with the naturalness of breathing. But inside that calm is an ocean of labor. To stay kind is to carry weight. Every time he absorbs someone else's pain, every time he swallows his frustration to keep peace, every time he chooses understanding over pride, he takes on something invisible. The world feels lighter for others because Darwin makes it so. But that weight doesn't disappear. It gathers quietly in him, like water filling a glass. Episodes like The Words, The Hero, and The Advice show this side of him clearly. When Gumball blurts out something cruel, Darwin is the one who smooths the silence. When Richard's childishness overwhelms Nicole, Darwin's calm brings her back to herself. When someone's plan collapses, he rebuilds it. Not because he has to, but because he can't bear to see someone he loves hurt. The more chaos he absorbs, the more invisible he becomes. That's the paradox of kindness. The better you are at it, the less people notice its work. Darwin doesn't resent that invisibility, but sometimes he feels it. There are moments, small, fleeting, when he grows quiet after helping everyone else, sitting by himself, eyes unfocused, still smiling but not entirely there. The show rarely lingers on it, but you can feel it between lines of dialogue. It's the exhaustion that comes from endless empathy. He's the emotional first responder of Elmore, and that role has no rest days. Even his laughter, light and melodic, sometimes carries an undertone of fatigue, as if joy itself has weight when you're holding it for everyone. In The Hero, Darwin idolizes Richard's easygoing optimism, thinking that being happy means never worrying. But as he tries to imitate that carefree attitude, he realizes that Richard's happiness is avoidance, not peace. Darwin's kindness can't come from denial. It comes from engagement. He feels deeply and still chooses to love. That's his difference. Happiness isn't his goal. It's his side effect. His goal is harmony, even when achieving it cost him comfort. Nicole often sees this part of him more clearly than anyone. She's built her life on effort, on constant striving, on doing more than anyone else. Darwin reminds her that gentleness can also be discipline. In the limit, when she loses control over something trivial, it's Darwin's voice. Small, trembling, honest, that stops her. "Mum, you're scaring me." That line pierces through the chaos, not because it's dramatic, but because it's real. He doesn't argue, doesn't moralize. He just reveals his feeling. And in that vulnerability, he gives her clarity. That's Darwin's greatest power, to heal without demanding. But kindness, as he learns, is not infinite. In The Gift, Darwin's generosity becomes a loop that others exploit. He gives and gives until he feels small. That episode is one of the rare times we see him break. Not into anger, but into confusion. He can't understand why his goodness isn't enough to make people good in return. That heartbreak is quiet but deep. It's the moment innocence collides with entropy. He learns then that kindness cannot fix everyone, and that trying to do so will empty you out. His sadness isn't just for himself, it's for the world's stubborn refusal to be as gentle as he imagines it could be. Still, he doesn't let that lesson turn him bitter. He doesn't retreat from the world. He recalibrates his kindness. He learns to give without expectation, to love without needing applause, to forgive without needing to be understood. His kindness becomes mature, deliberate, almost spiritual. It's no longer about making things better. It's about being present through their imperfection. That's when Darwin stops being just the heart of Elmore and becomes its quiet philosopher. Kindness, for Darwin, is a language he speaks even when others don't listen. It's in the way he hands someone a tissue before they ask, in how he laughs at jokes that aren't funny because he knows someone needs to feel heard, in how he notices when someone is missing from class and saves them a seat anyway. His care is woven into the fabric of daily life, subtle and constant. And while others rush from one catastrophe to another, Darwin moves slowly, deliberately, leaving small traces of peace behind him. There's a scene in the party where everyone is dancing chaotically, the music loud, the lights flickering. Gumball, anxious and awkward, tries to keep up and fails miserably. Darwin sees him struggling, doesn't tease him, doesn't rescue him, he simply joins him. His rhythm is silly, his smile calm. In that moment, he turns humiliation into harmony. It's such a small act, but it's what kindness really is. The ability to make someone feel safe in their own skin. That's Darwin's genius. He doesn't change people by convincing them. He changes them by being someone they can breathe around. Yet, his kindness isn't always sweetness. It has a spine. When someone crosses a line, he doesn't explode, but his disappointment lands harder than anger ever could. In the words, when Gumball uses honesty as a weapon, Darwin's silence cuts deeper than any argument. He doesn't lecture, he lets the weight of his hurt speak. That's another form of strength, refusing to escalate pain, even when you have every right to. Sometimes, Darwin's kindness looks like stillness. In the safety, while everyone else panics, he becomes the calm center. He understands that fear feeds itself, and that the only way to stop chaos is to stop feeding it. His kindness, then, becomes a kind of wisdom, a refusal to multiply suffering. It's an understanding that compassion isn't always about doing something. Well, sometimes it's about doing nothing until the storm passes. That kind of patience is rare. It's also heavy. The weight of kindness is cumulative. It doesn't break all at once. It gathers slowly. Over time, you see it in Darwin's posture. Shoulders just slightly slumped. Smile still bright, but quieter. Laughter tinged with thoughtfulness. But it's not sadness. It's serenity. The weight he carries doesn't crush him. It grounds him. It's the same gravity that pulled him from the bowl in the first place, transformed now into empathy. Kindness anchors him to the world. It keeps him from floating too far into detachment. In Elmore's chaos, that anchor matters. The town runs on noise and impulse, but Darwin's kindness gives it rhythm. He turns the randomness into melody, the contradictions into chords. Without him, the world would be only volume. With him, it becomes music. His presence reminds everyone, characters and viewers alike, that compassion isn't decoration. It's structure. It's what keeps the absurd from becoming meaningless. Even when Darwin's kindness hurts him, he doesn't stop believing in it. He just learns to hold it differently. In the later episodes, his kindness matures into gentleness with boundaries. He no longer tries to fix everything. He understands that love, to last, must coexist with imperfection. He stops expecting harmony and starts practicing it moment by moment. There's no triumph in that, just quiet endurance. But that's what real compassion is. The willingness to stay kind, even when no one notices, even when the world keeps falling apart. At the end of the day, when the Wattersons have exhausted each other and the house hums with post-chaos silence, Darwin sits with them on the couch. The TV flickers, casting soft light across their faces. They've shouted, laughed, apologized, and forgiven. Nicole's hand rests on his shoulder. Richard snores lightly. Gumball leans against him, half asleep. Darwin smiles, not because everything's perfect, but because everyone's still here. His kindness has done its job, not to erase the mess, but to hold it together. In the Philosophy of Darwin Watterson, kindness is not a choice made once. It's a rhythm you keep returning to, even when your voice shakes, even when your heart feels heavy. It's the faith that love, though fragile, is still worth carrying. The world doesn't need to notice for it to matter. It only needs to keep beating, softly, beneath the noise. If Darwin is the ocean, then Gumball is the storm above it. Loud, erratic, brilliant, and full of restless energy. The two of them together create the climate of Elmore. Chaos and calm swirling in perfect imbalance. Gumball acts first and feels later. Darwin feels first and then acts. They are not opposites, but reflections, each revealing what the other cannot see alone. To understand one, you must look through the other. That is the quiet philosophy that runs beneath every joke, every argument, and every shared laugh in the Amazing World of Gumball. Their friendship is not just a plot device, it's the show's emotional equation. The proof that two imperfect beings can keep each other whole. When we first meet them, their dynamic seems simple. Gumball leads, Darwin follows. The human boy is bold and reckless. The fish-turned brother is loyal and patient. Gumball leaps before thinking. Darwin catches him on the way down, but over time, the roles blur. Darwin starts making choices for himself. He questions Gumball's plans, argues when it matters, and eventually becomes the conscience Gumball didn't know he needed. What begins as dependence becomes balance. By the end of the series, their bond has evolved from comedy to philosophy, a living meditation on growth, love, and identity. Their relationship works because they are both trying to understand what it means to be human, but from different directions. Gumball, born into a world that constantly bends reality, seeks control. Darwin, born from something simpler, seeks connection. Gumball wants to define the world. Darwin wants to feel it. That difference creates tension, but also harmony. In episodes like The Bros and The Words, we see Gumball's ego collide with Darwin's empathy. They argue, misunderstand each other, hurt each other, but never for long. Their fights end not in grand apologies, but in laughter, as if both of them instinctively know that love matters more than being right. In The Bros, Gumball tries to prove he's the dominant one, the leader, the cooler brother. Darwin plays along until it hurts. He admires Gumball deeply, but he won't sacrifice his sense of self for it. When Gumball finally realizes he's taken advantage of that loyalty, the silence between them becomes heavier than any argument. It's Darwin's quiet disappointment that teaches Gumball humility. That's their dynamic distilled. Gumball's chaos creates consequences, and Darwin's compassion gives them meaning. Together they turn every mistake into a lesson. Without Gumball, Darwin's empathy would never be tested. Without Darwin, Gumball's ambition would never soften into love. There's something archetypal about their bond. Hero and heart, thinker and feeler, chaos and grace. Yet it never feels symbolic when you watch them. It feels lived in, messy, real. Their friendship grows like siblings do, through noise and forgiveness. In the limit, when Nicole's anger boils over and the family nearly destroys itself, Gumball's first instinct is to yell. Darwin's is to cry. But when he cries, the room stops. Gumball sees his own fear reflected in that tear, and for a moment, both of them are quiet. That's how Darwin teaches him, not through reason, but through reflection. He doesn't tell Gumball to change. He lets Gumball see himself in Darwin's eyes. And in those eyes, Gumball sees something he doesn't know how to be. Calm, patient, accepting. He envies it, but also needs it. In the same way, Darwin looks at Gumball and sees something he wishes he had. Courage, recklessness, defiance. They admire what they lack and protect what they share. That's why their friendship feels eternal. Each is the missing piece of the other's philosophy. They complete a circle that keeps both from spinning too far into their extremes. Gumball stops Darwin from dissolving into passivity, and Darwin stops Gumball from collapsing into chaos. It's not balance as stasis, but balance as motion, the push and pull of two souls learning to coexist. Their interdependence is especially visible in The Void and The Rerun, where the universe itself threatens to unravel. When Gumball's confidence breaks, Darwin becomes his tether. He doesn't reason with him, doesn't promise safety, he simply says, "I'm here." Those two words carry the weight of every adventure they've shared. For Gumball, who constantly tries to control a senseless world, Darwin's presence is proof that not everything has to make sense to be real. And for Darwin, Gumball's defiance is proof that love can survive even when logic collapses. Together they make chaos bearable. It's easy to overlook how much of Gumball's growth happens because of Darwin. Gumball begins the series selfish, impulsive, and insecure, a boy who performs bravery because he's terrified of irrelevance. Darwin's loyalty gives him a safe space to fail. He doesn't demand that Gumball be perfect. He just stays beside him long enough for him to become sincere. In The Hero, Gumball's arrogance fractures when he realizes that Richard, his father, isn't a figure to surpass, but a person to understand. Darwin is the bridge that makes that realization possible. His empathy becomes the language through which Gumball learns to love honestly. That's what makes their friendship feel spiritual. It's not about similarity, but transformation. Darwin's love for Gumball isn't blind. He sees his flaws clearly. The jealousy, the vanity, the endless need for validation. But he never weaponizes that knowledge. He teases, yes, but he never humiliates. His humor is medicine, not judgment. And when Gumball finally breaks, when the performance cracks and the boy beneath shows fear, Darwin doesn't fix him. He holds him. There's no lesson, no speech, no resolution. Just quiet acceptance. That's what real love looks like in a world that mistakes volume for care. At the same time, Gumball's influence on Darwin shouldn't be underestimated. Without Gumball, Darwin might have remained too passive, too yielding. It's Gumball who teaches him to take risks, to act even when afraid, to defend what matters. In The Bros, it's Gumball's chaos that forces Darwin to define his boundaries. In The Origins, it's Gumball's friendship that pulls Darwin out of the water, literally and metaphorically. Gumball is the fire that gives Darwin shape. Darwin is the water that keeps that fire from burning everything down. They don't cancel each other. They coexist like elements in balance. Their friendship is the proof that harmony doesn't mean sameness. It means difference in dialogue. There are episodes where they switch roles completely. In The Words, Darwin becomes the assertive one, teaching Gumball restraint. In The Bros, he becomes the wise one, showing Gumball that love isn't hierarchy. And in The Shell, when Gumball falls in love with Penny and can't articulate his feelings, it's Darwin who guides him toward vulnerability. He doesn't tease or advise, he models openness. Watching Darwin love freely gives Gumball the courage to do the same. In those moments, Gumball becomes the student and Darwin the teacher. But neither stays in one role for long. Their growth is mutual, ongoing, circular. What makes their relationship uniquely powerful is that it's rooted in forgiveness. Every episode where they fight eventually ends in reconciliation, not because the show resets, but because that's who they are. They can't hold grudges. It would break the rhythm between them. They know each other's flaws too well to mistake them for malice. Gumball's mistakes are often loud. Darwin's are quiet. But both always return to the same center. Love without pride. Their forgiveness isn't forgetfulness. It's the understanding that imperfection is part of the connection. In The Disaster, when the world literally begins to end, Gumball panics, trying to control the uncontrollable. Darwin doesn't. He accepts the collapse with grace, holding Gumball's hand as everything fades. There's no fear in him, only love. That image, the storm and the ocean, hand in hand as the universe breaks, is the truest depiction of their friendship. It's not about saving the world, it's about being there while it falls apart. In that shared stillness, chaos finds peace. What's remarkable is how their humor sustains it all. They laugh constantly, even when it hurts. Their jokes aren't escapes, They're rituals of survival. Each punchline is a small rebellion against despair. Darwin's laughter softens Gumball's self-loathing. Gumball's jokes pull Darwin out of overthinking. They speak the language of absurdity fluently, turning nonsense into affection. Every laugh they share is a reminder that meaning doesn't have to be serious to be sincere. That's their secret: humor as empathy, comedy as care. By the later seasons, their friendship has matured into something familial and philosophical at once. They are no longer just partners in mischief, they're mirrors reflecting each other's evolution. Gumball's idealism becomes less frantic. Darwin's empathy becomes more grounded. They don't fix each other, but they calibrate. Every glance between them carries history, 1,000 tiny moments of trust, misunderstanding, forgiveness, and joy. They don't need to say much anymore. Their silence has meaning now. There's an image near the end of the finale that captures it perfectly. Gumball standing defiant against the collapse, Darwin at his side, unafraid. They don't win. They don't lose. They just stand together, smiling into the void. It's a moment both absurd and profound, the embodiment of their entire philosophy. Life doesn't make sense, but love does. The world may reset tomorrow, but this feeling remains. Their friendship is, in a way, the show's answer to chaos itself. Elmore is a place where physics, continuity, and logic constantly fail, but emotion never does. Gumball and Darwin are the emotional constants that make the nonsense matter. They prove that connection, no matter how improbable, is the only thing that endures. The storm needs the ocean. The ocean needs the storm. That's not tragedy, it's balance. It's the sound of two hearts learning to beat in the same rhythm, even when the world can't decide what song it's playing. And when the day ends, when the town goes quiet and the Wattersons drift into their familiar, messy peace, you can imagine the two brothers lying awake, whispering nonsense in the dark, laughing about everything and nothing, like they always have. The laughter fades, the silence stretches, and somewhere between it all, there's understanding. They don't need words for it anymore. Gumball's hand finds Darwin's. The world outside flickers, breaks, reforms, but the connection remains. Simple, steady, endless. The mirror holds. Darwin Watterson is a creature made of laughter, but his joy has never been the easy kind. It isn't the thoughtless giggle of someone who doesn't understand pain. It's the deliberate joy of someone who does, and still chooses to smile. In a world like Elmore, where logic collapses and meaning slips through your fingers, joy is fragile. It can't be held tightly without breaking. That's something Darwin learns slowly. Happiness isn't a possession. It's a rhythm. It comes and goes like the tide. And his gift is that he knows how to float when it recedes. Darwin's laughter fills the show like light spilling through cracks. It comes at strange times, in disaster, in confusion, in moments that should feel heavy, and somehow it always fits. When Gumball panics, Darwin laughs. When Richard fails spectacularly, Darwin laughs. It isn't mockery, it's survival. Laughter, for Darwin, is an act of faith. It's the sound he makes to remind the world that beauty still exists beneath the absurd. He doesn't laugh because he doesn't care. He laughs because he does. His joy is never denial. It's defiance, quiet and luminous. In the party, his laughter turns awkwardness into acceptance. Everyone else is posturing, performing, trying to fit an idea of what fun should look like. Darwin doesn't understand the rules, so he invents his own. He dances off beat, smiles too wide, and suddenly everyone else loosens. The air shifts. He reminds them that joy doesn't need to be perfect to be real. That's the heart of his philosophy. Happiness as participation, not performance. He doesn't chase joy, he creates the conditions for it to appear. But for Darwin, joy also carries awareness. He feels it and knows it could vanish at any moment. That awareness gives his happiness depth, a kind of melancholy woven into the brightness. You can see it in episodes like The Kids and The Origins, where he looks at his family with such tenderness it almost hurts. He laughs, but there's longing in it, gratitude tangled with fear. He knows how easily things fall apart. He's lived in a world where existence can blink out of continuity, where love survives by memory alone. So he holds each moment like it's temporary, and that's what makes it sacred. There's a quiet wisdom in how Darwin treats joy not as an escape, but as a form of honesty. He doesn't pretend everything is fine. He simply refuses to let sadness have the final word. In The Limit, when Nicole's rage threatens to crush the family, Darwin doesn't fight back with logic or argument. He cries, and then he smiles. The contrast isn't contradiction, it's balance. His emotions don't cancel each other out. They complete each other. To Darwin, joy without sorrow isn't real, and sorrow without joy isn't survivable. He understands that both are water from the same ocean. His relationship with Gumball often exposes this fragility. Gumball seeks happiness like a prize. Darwin treats it like a conversation. When they win, Gumball celebrates loudly. When they lose, he collapses. Darwin, meanwhile, stays steady, not because he feels less, but because he feels more. He knows that joy can't be forced. In The Words and the Bros, we see him watch Gumball self-destruct, chasing happiness that impresses others. Darwin doesn't stop him. He waits for the storm to pass, then reminds him quietly that joy doesn't need an audience. It only needs truth. But joy costs him something too. In The Gift and the Safety, Darwin's generosity and optimism are tested by exhaustion. He tries to keep everyone cheerful, to smooth every argument, to make the world pleasant for everyone else. It works, for a while. But the effort of maintaining light can dim it. There are moments where he smiles through fatigue, and you can almost feel the ache behind it. It's not false, but it's fragile. His joy depends on his ability to keep giving, and sometimes that giving empties him out. That's the weight of his empathy. The more he loves, the more he risks losing balance. Yet, even when joy breaks, Darwin rebuilds it. Not with denial, but with faith. He allows himself to feel the absence, to sit in silence, to let the laughter return naturally. That's why his happiness always feels earned. It isn't constant, but it's sincere. In a way, Darwin's joy resembles breathing. Inhale pain, exhale hope. Every day in Elmore, he practices it through failures, through absurdities, through moments when reality itself stops making sense. His joy survives because it's flexible. It bends, adapts, reforms. It never denies what's broken. It just keeps singing in spite of it. There's a scene near the end of The Origins where young Darwin, having just learned to walk, slips and falls. Gumball rushes over, panicked, but Darwin just giggles. He doesn't know why he's laughing. Maybe because falling is funny. Maybe because it doesn't hurt as much as he thought. Maybe because he's simply glad to be alive. That giggle is his entire worldview condensed into a moment. He doesn't separate danger from delight. To him, life's absurdity is its beauty. Pain is temporary, and laughter is how you remember that. Darwin's joy also has a relational nature. It thrives in connection. He's rarely happy alone, not because he's incapable of solitude, but because his joy multiplies when shared. In The Hero and the Party, his laughter brings everyone else into alignment. Joy for Darwin isn't personal achievement, it's collective balance. That's why he's always trying to include others, even those who don't deserve it. He doesn't hoard happiness, he circulates it like light bouncing off water. But that also makes him vulnerable. When the people around him lose faith, his joy dims too. He's not immune to the moods of the world. He's made of them. This fragility doesn't make him weak. It makes him human. Darwin's sensitivity to happiness, his inability to hold it still, is what allows him to recognize its value. He treats every moment of laughter like a miracle precisely because he knows it won't last. When he jokes with Gumball, dances with Richard, or watches Nicole's rare soft smile, there's reverence in it. He doesn't take joy for granted. He honors it. Every burst of laughter is a prayer. Every smile a tiny act of worship to the absurd gods of Elmore. Sometimes, though, his joy breaks suddenly, like glass. In the disaster or the rerun, when everything he loves seems to dissolve, Darwin's hope falters. He feels fear, real and raw. But even then, he doesn't despair completely. He allows sadness its time, but he never lets it claim his heart permanently. When joy finally returns, even in the smallest form, a joke, a glance, a breath of relief, it feels like sunrise. That's Darwin's quiet strength. He doesn't pretend that joy is permanent, but he believes it will return. It always does. Darwin's philosophy of joy is, ultimately, a philosophy of balance. He doesn't want endless happiness. He wants harmony. The kind of peace where laughter and tears exist side by side, neither cancelling the other. That's why his laughter never feels empty. It's built on awareness, not ignorance. He knows how fragile joy is, how it flickers, fades, and needs protection. That knowledge doesn't make him love it less. It makes him love it more. His joy isn't naive. It's informed. It carries the weight of everything he's seen and forgives the world anyway. And when the day ends, when the Watterson house is quiet and the moonlight paints soft waves across the living room, Darwin's laughter lingers in the air like music. It's faint, maybe imagined, but it stays. Proof that happiness can echo even after the noise fades. He doesn't cling to it. He lets it pass, knowing it will return when it's ready. That's the peace he's earned. The understanding that joy is not a treasure to keep, but a tide to trust. Darwin's joy is fragile because it's alive. It moves, it changes, it breaks and reforms. It is as delicate and enduring as the world itself, and in that fragility lies its beauty. The shimmer of light on the surface of an endless sea, reflecting a boy who once stepped out of his bowl and decided to laugh, no matter what the world became. Forgiveness for Darwin Watterson isn't an idea he talks about. It's a rhythm he lives by. It's the pulse beneath his laughter, the quiet decision that keeps him soft in a world that hardens everything it touches. Where most people think of forgiveness as an act of letting go, Darwin treats it as an act of holding on, to love, to hope, to the belief that people can be more than their worst moments. In a place like Elmore, where chaos reigns and mistakes happen every few seconds, forgiveness isn't a virtue, it's survival. From the moment Darwin grows legs and joins his family, forgiveness becomes his first language. He forgives Gumball for his recklessness almost daily, Nicole for her temper, Richard for his oblivion, even Anais for her occasional cruelty disguised as intellect. He forgives because he understands that love is heavier than pride. He knows people don't mean every bad thing they do. Sometimes they're just scared, or tired, or lost. To him, forgiveness isn't surrender, it's recognition. It's the understanding that imperfection is just another form of humanity. There's a subtle pattern that runs through the amazing world of Gumball. Gumball acts, Darwin repairs, Gumball breaks, Darwin mends. But the mending isn't mechanical, it's emotional. When Gumball's ego spirals, Darwin steadies him not with logic, but with grace. He listens without judgment, laughs without bitterness, and reminds Gumball, without ever saying it outright, that he's still loved, even when he's wrong. That love is Gumball's anchor. It's what allows him to grow. Darwin's forgiveness keeps the whole family human, but forgiveness is not free. Every act of compassion costs Darwin something invisible. He carries the memory of each argument, each moment when someone's words cut too deeply, each time he's blamed for trying too hard. Forgiveness doesn't erase pain, it transforms it into something livable. Darwin doesn't forgive because it's easy. He forgives because the alternative is bitterness, and bitterness would destroy everything he stands for. His kindness is a form of resistance. He stays gentle not because he's unaware of cruelty, but because he refuses to let cruelty define the atmosphere he breathes. In the words, when Gumball uses honesty like a weapon, Darwin's response is heartbreak, not vengeance. He walks away, eyes full of tears, but by the end he's laughing again, because that's who he is. Forgiveness comes naturally to him, not as forgetfulness, but as perspective. He knows that anger is like fire. It can warm for a moment, but it burns everything if you hold on to it too long. His calm is not indifference. It's the wisdom of someone who understands that emotional survival depends on release. In The Bros, when Gumball treats Darwin as an accessory instead of a partner, Darwin's forgiveness is quieter. He doesn't confront him with speeches, he just stops following for a while. The space between them teaches more than any words could. When Gumball finally apologizes, Darwin's acceptance isn't dramatic. He smiles, as if he'd already forgiven him long before. That's Darwin's way. His forgiveness is proactive. He doesn't wait for an apology to release resentment. He releases it because it's too heavy to carry. He forgives because he values peace more than pride. Still, there are limits, and the show occasionally lets us glimpse them. In The Gift, when Darwin's generosity is abused, the light in his eyes dims. He becomes quieter, more cautious. Forgiveness is hard at that time, slower, but he still arrives at it, walking through the pain instead of around it. What's beautiful is that his forgiveness doesn't excuse others. It transforms him. It teaches him that compassion isn't about pretending everything's fine. It's about choosing love even when things aren't. That choice becomes his defining philosophy. Forgiveness not as absolution, but as endurance. Darwin forgives because he remembers being forgiven. His entire existence is a result of it. When he first appeared in the Watterson household, he wasn't perfect. He broke things, misunderstood, caused trouble, but the family kept loving him. Their acceptance gave him a place in the world. That memory lives in him like a heartbeat. It's why he never gives up on people. Because once, someone refused to give up on him. His forgiveness is a continuation of the love that created him. There's a deeper layer to Darwin's compassion, though, one that isn't about morality but identity. He doesn't see forgiveness as something he does, he sees it as something he is. It's built into his being the way water carries reflection. When Gumball lashes out or Nicole loses control, Darwin doesn't decide to forgive them. He just does. It's instinct. He feels their pain alongside his own and can't separate them. Forgiveness to him isn't a conscious act. It's empathy manifest. He can't hold grudges because he feels too connected to everyone to see them as enemies. That empathy sometimes isolates him. There are episodes where his peace makes others uncomfortable. When everyone else wants revenge, Darwin hesitates. When the town chooses outrage, he chooses understanding. He becomes a mirror that reveals everyone's cruelty back to them. In The Limit, when Nicole's rage breaks through the ceiling, Darwin's tears pull her back down to earth. He doesn't fight fire with fire. He extinguishes it with presence. That's how forgiveness works for him. Not as weakness, but as gravity. He pulls people back toward love, yet even gravity feels fatigue. Forgiveness wears him down sometimes. There are moments, subtle but visible, when Darwin pauses before forgiving. When you can sense that he's tired of always being the bigger person. His silence stretches, his smile falters. He doesn't explode, he withdraws. Those pauses are his quiet boundaries. Forgiveness doesn't mean allowing harm to continue. It means understanding it, grieving it, then stepping back to heal. In those pauses, Darwin protects himself without betraying his nature. That's how forgiveness matures, not as endless tolerance, but as wisdom in knowing when to rest. In the advice, he learns that not every situation needs fixing. When Gumball's plans fall apart, Darwin's first instinct is to repair them. But eventually, he realizes that some mistakes belong to the people who make them. Forgiveness, he learns, isn't about taking responsibility for others. It's about releasing responsibility for their choices. That's when his compassion becomes self-respect. He learns to forgive without erasing himself, to love without dissolving. Darwin's forgiveness is cosmic in its scope. In a universe that resets, where continuity bends and past events are half forgotten, Darwin remembers emotionally what others forget narratively. He carries memory and feeling. When a new day begins, when the timeline loops again, he greets everyone with the same warmth, even if yesterday they hurt him. Not because he's forgotten, but because he knows that every day is a chance to love better. That's what makes him almost divine in his simplicity. He treats time not as a line, but as a cycle of compassion. The fragility of forgiveness is that it requires constant renewal. Darwin knows this. Every act of forgiveness drains and restores him in equal measure. He doesn't expect a final peace. He expects to keep choosing peace, again and again, like breathing. Forgiveness for him is not closure, it's maintenance. It's how he keeps the machinery of love running in a broken world. And though the world never thanks him for it, it moves smoother because of his grace. At the end of each long, exhausting day, when the house settles into its quiet rhythm and the air hums with leftover noise, Darwin lies still, feeling the faint ache in his chest. The day's arguments, misunderstandings, and small cruelties echo faintly, like waves retreating. He exhales, lets them go. It doesn't erase the pain, it simply releases it. He closes his eyes and forgives the world for being what it is. Loud, flawed, alive. And in doing so, he finds rest. Because for Darwin Watterson, forgiveness is not what you do when everything is over. It's what you do so everything can begin again. It's how love survives its own exhaustion. How hope keeps breathing even after being broken. Forgiveness is how Darwin lives. How he endures. How he turns every hurt into a lesson in gentleness. And when morning comes, he'll wake up, smile, and start over, as if nothing ever needed forgiving at all. Love, for Darwin Watterson, is not something he ever tries to define. He doesn't speak about it in grand words or gestures, because for him, love isn't an idea. It's the air between people. It's movement, warmth, tone, silence. It's everything that happens when you stop trying to prove that you care and just start being present. In the Watterson house, a home full of noise, laughter, explosions, and misunderstandings, Darwin's love moves quietly through the chaos, holding it together like gravity. He's not the loudest or the strongest, but he is the one who keeps everyone orbiting the same sun. Darwin doesn't use love as language. He uses language as love. Every word he speaks, every gesture he makes, is filtered through affection. When he calls Gumball's name, it always sounds like reassurance. When he laughs, it's never at someone, but with them. When he listens, he does it with his whole body, eyes soft, shoulders relaxed, breath steady. It's a form of communication that transcends speech. He doesn't need to say, "I love you," because it's already there, in the way he waits, forgives, remembers, and stays. Darwin's love is constant background music. The kind you don't notice until it's gone, and then the silence feels wrong. In the origins, love is what literally gives him life. The family's care transforms him from pet to person. Gumball's affection, in particular, is what awakens him. Their bond isn't something that develops over time, it begins as the foundation of his existence. Every step Darwin takes after that is a continuation of that initial act of love, an echo that keeps reverberating through every choice he makes. He was created by love, and that makes him incapable of seeing the world any other way. Even when others fail him, he searches for the love beneath their mistakes, the tenderness behind their noise. Love for Darwin is less about passion and more about presence. It's about showing up, staying patient, and returning even after the world has fallen apart. In The Limit, when the family's greed spirals out of control, Darwin's tears break the tension not because they're dramatic, but because they're honest. He doesn't manipulate with emotion, he simply reveals it. That openness, that refusal to hide what he feels, becomes the show's emotional compass. Love, in Darwin's philosophy, doesn't need to be complicated. It just needs to be real. Gumball expresses love through chaos, big gestures, desperate apologies, dramatic promises. Darwin expresses it through continuity. He doesn't need to fix everything. He just keeps showing up. When Gumball forgets his kindness, Darwin waits for him to remember. When Nicole lashes out from exhaustion, Darwin meets her anger with softness until it dissolves. When Richard's obliviousness creates trouble, Darwin redirects it with humor. He never stops loving people because of their flaws. He loves them more, deeply because of them. He doesn't want perfection. He wants connection. There's a purity to the way Darwin loves that feels almost divine, but it's also deeply human. He doesn't need reasons. He doesn't tally debts or keep score. When he gives affection, it's unconditional. Yet, it's never foolish. He knows love doesn't always heal people. Sometimes it only makes their pain visible. But that's enough for him. In the words, when honesty causes chaos, Darwin learns that love isn't always gentle. Sometimes it has to tell the truth, even when it hurts. He doesn't stop caring when love becomes difficult. He simply expands his understanding of what love can mean. Darwin's relationship with Penny, though less central than Gumball's, reflects this same emotional fluency. He understands her without needing translation. When she shifts forms, he isn't startled by the change. He accepts it with delight. His reaction to difference is always inclusion. That's how he loves, without resistance, without trying to mold others into something safe. To Darwin, love is adaptation, the way water fills any shape without losing itself. He doesn't define people by what they are. He defines them by how they make him feel, and what he can give in return. Even in moments of loneliness, Darwin's capacity for love doesn't fade. In the advice, he feels unappreciated after helping Gumball over and over, but instead of retreating into resentment, he reflects. He realizes that love is not a transaction. You don't love to be thanked. You love because it's the only way to stay alive in a world that constantly forgets your kindness. This realization is quiet but monumental. It's the moment Darwin graduates from affection as instinct to affection as philosophy. Darwin's love language extends beyond people. He loves the world itself, its strangeness, its humor, its unpredictability. He finds beauty in broken things, joy in absurdity. In the void, when the laws of reality crumble, Darwin's first instinct isn't fear, but awe. He feels wonder even at the end of everything. That wonder is love too. The love of being, of existence, of possibility. His affection stretches beyond relationships into a reverence for life itself. That's why his love feels boundless. It's not romantic, not even personal. It's elemental. What makes Darwin's love different from everyone else's is how fluent he is in silence. He knows when not to speak, when not to fix, when not to force comfort. Sometimes the most loving thing he does is sit quietly beside someone in pain. When Gumball is grieving or Nicole is burned out, Darwin doesn't distract or preach. He listens. He doesn't fill the space with solutions. He fills it with presence. He understands that love doesn't always speak. Sometimes it just breathes beside you until you're ready to move again. His love also has humor in it, the kind that doesn't belittle but lightens. When he teases Gumball, it's never to wound, but to remind him that life isn't as heavy as it feels. He uses laughter as language, not to dismiss seriousness, but to reframe it. Love, for Darwin, is the ability to make people laugh without making them feel small. That balance of sincerity and play is the heartbeat of his philosophy. It's how he turns affection into art. In The Party and the Bros, love becomes Darwin's way of navigating identity. He doesn't measure relationships by depth or duration, but by sincerity. A moment of genuine laughter with a stranger can mean more to him than a forced friendship. He isn't attached to permanence, he's attached to truth. That's what makes his love sustainable in a world as volatile as Elmore. He doesn't demand forever, he celebrates now. Every smile, every shared silence, every fleeting connection. For Darwin, they're all sacred, because they happened. But the most beautiful thing about Darwin's love is that it's never just outward. He extends the same gentleness inward. He forgives himself when he fails, comforts himself when he's hurt, encourages himself when he doubts. In a show where most characters are exaggerated parodies of human behavior, Darwin quietly models self-compassion. He doesn't base his worth on how much he gives, he loves because it's who he is. That self-love isn't vanity, it's stability. It allows him to keep loving others without depletion. By the time the finale arrives, Darwin's understanding of love feels complete, not because it's grand, but because it's consistent. The world may fall apart, but his affection remains. He doesn't panic when the universe resets, he just reaches for Gumball's hand. That gesture, simple, wordless, infinite, contains his whole philosophy. Love isn't a shield against endings. It's the thing that makes endings bearable. It's the quiet continuity that keeps life meaningful, even in absurdity. When the day finally winds down and the noise of Elmore softens into its strange peace, Darwin moves through the house like warmth left behind by sunlight. The others are asleep, but he lingers a little longer, adjusting a blanket, turning off a lamp, smiling at the small stillness around him. He doesn't need to say goodnight. His love has already said everything. And somewhere in the quiet, the world feels whole again, fragile, flawed, but loved exactly as it is. Awareness is the point where innocence meets truth, and for Darwin Watterson, that meeting is not a single moment, but a lifelong unfolding. He begins as a being of pure wonder, a fish who learns to walk, talk, love, and laugh, without ever questioning why he exists. But as he grows, as Elmore grows with him, he starts to see the edges of things, the cracks beneath the colour, the fatigue behind the laughter, the fragility hidden beneath the chaos. It's in those quiet recognitions, the ones that pass unspoken between adventures, that Darwin starts to carry the weight of understanding. Awareness for him is not a gift. It's a burden he bears gently, because he knows it's the price of empathy. Darwin's awareness begins in small ways. In the origins, he is pure instinct and affection. He loves because he was made from love, and at first, that seems enough. But the more he learns, the more he sees how love alone doesn't always protect people from hurting each other. Gumball's temper, Nicole's stress, Richard's forgetfulness, Darwin begins to sense the invisible currents beneath these flaws. He realizes that everyone he loves is struggling in their own way, and that no amount of kindness can fix everything. This is his first heartbreak. The discovery that understanding doesn't always lead to peace. Awareness doesn't simplify life, it complicates it. In the words and the bros, Darwin learns that honesty and love don't always align. He watches Gumball say things that are true but cruel, or kind but dishonest, and he sees how fragile communication becomes when people don't mean what they say. It hurts him, not because of the words themselves, but because he understands the feelings behind them. He begins to sense that life in Elmore, and maybe life in general, is built on contradictions. People want to be seen, but fear exposure. They crave connection, but hide behind pride. Darwin's heart starts to stretch to hold all these conflicting truths. And in doing so, he grows up. Awareness brings wisdom, but it also brings sorrow. In the kids, when Darwin realizes that he and Gumball are getting older, the laughter fades for a moment. He looks at his hands, at the world changing around him, and something inside him trembles. Growing up means learning that nothing stays the same, that every joy is temporary, every moment dissolves. For someone who feels everything as deeply as Darwin does, that knowledge is both terrifying and beautiful. He doesn't deny it, he absorbs it. That's the difference between Darwin and the others. When he learns something painful, he doesn't turn away. He lets it shape him. There's a scene in The Limit that defines this transition. Nicole, overwhelmed by her own expectations, loses control. The world bends under her fury. Gumball tries to fight her. Richard hides. Anais freezes. But Darwin, small and shaking, steps forward. His eyes are full of fear, but also compassion. He doesn't see a monster. He sees his mother, trapped inside her anger. "Mom, you're scaring me," he says. Those words cut through the noise because they come from awareness. He's not just reacting, he's perceiving. He understands the complexity of love, that it can wound even when it's meant to protect. His awareness gives him courage, and that courage saves the family. Awareness also changes the way Darwin experiences joy. It makes it sharper, more precious. He no longer laughs because he doesn't see the darkness. He laughs because he sees it, and still chooses light. In the party, surrounded by posturing teenagers and superficial joy, Darwin's awkwardness becomes wisdom. He doesn't understand the masks they wear, and he doesn't want to. His simplicity is not ignorance, it's rebellion. He refuses to participate in a version of happiness that requires self-betrayal. That's the strength of his awareness. He knows what joy feels like when it's real, and he protects it fiercely. But awareness is heavy. There are times when it isolates him, when he feels too much and can't explain why. In the advice, he realizes that helping others doesn't always help himself. He sees that Gumball's chaos will never end, that Nicole's temper will always return, that Elmore itself is built on cycles of absurdity that no one can escape. For a moment, he feels powerless. His kindness begins to ache. Awareness becomes exhaustion, not because he's tired of caring, but because he's realized that caring doesn't always change anything. It's in that quiet fatigue that Darwin becomes truly human. Awareness strips away the illusion of control and replaces it with compassion. Darwin's awareness also gives him empathy for the strange and the misunderstood. In the void, when he confronts a world erased from continuity, he sees the loneliness of forgotten things. Most would be horrified. Darwin feels sorrow. He understands that even things deemed meaningless were once loved. Awareness for him means inclusion, the ability to feel for everything, not just what's easy to love. His compassion expands to cosmic scale, embracing not only people but the forgotten, the broken, the unreal. Awareness transforms him from a character into a witness. Someone who sees the truth of the world and still believes it deserves kindness. And yet, awareness never makes him bitter. That's what makes Darwin extraordinary. Most characters who learn too much about the world retreat from it. He moves closer. Awareness deepens his love instead of dimming it. He accepts contradiction as part of being alive. He knows people can be cruel and still good, lost and still worth finding. His philosophy becomes one of coexistence, joy and grief, order and chaos, laughter and silence, all held in the same gentle hands. Awareness, for Darwin, is not a burden to escape, but a companion to walk with. There's a beautiful irony in how his awareness often goes unnoticed by others. Gumball calls him too nice, Richard calls him sweet, Nicole calls him my little angel. None of them realize that Darwin's softness is a decision made with full awareness of how hard the world can be. He isn't untouched by pain, he's transformed by it. His peace is not the absence of struggle, it's the understanding of it. That's what awareness gives him, not answers, but acceptance. As the series progresses, Darwin's awareness matures into something close to wisdom. He becomes the moral compass of the Wattersons not by lecturing, but by living differently. When everyone else reacts, he reflects. When everyone rushes, he pauses. He has seen too much to believe that speed fixes anything. His slowness is intentional, almost sacred. It's how he keeps the world from spinning apart, by moving through it with care. Awareness also teaches him humility. He realizes that even his kindness can cause harm if it ignores others' autonomy. In the gift, his eagerness to make everyone happy backfires, and he learns that love without boundaries can smother. This awareness hurts, but he accepts it as part of growth. He never turns self-awareness into guilt, he turns it into grace. Each mistake becomes a refinement, each realization a deeper stillness. And in the cosmic strangeness of Elmore, a world that resets itself, forgets continuity, rewrites time, Darwin's awareness becomes something almost spiritual. He remembers what others forget. His emotional memory carries meaning through the chaos. He becomes the quiet thread of continuity that the universe itself seems to lack. Even when stories contradict themselves, Darwin's empathy stays true. His awareness then is a kind of enlightenment. The realization that meaning isn't found in consistency, but in compassion. At night, when the world slows and the laughter fades, Darwin feels the burden of awareness most clearly. He sits by the window, watching the streetlights flicker across the empty sidewalks, thinking about everything that happened, the jokes, the arguments, the small cruelties and quiet redemptions. He feels it all. It's too much for one heart, but he holds it anyway. He knows he can't solve the world's absurdity, can't make everyone kind, can't stop time from changing, but he can stay gentle, he can stay aware, and that is enough. Awareness hurts, but it also illuminates. It's the light that casts shadows, the clarity that reveals texture, the ache that proves you're still alive. Darwin carries that light without flinching. He doesn't try to make it smaller or softer. He simply learns how to live beneath it. That's the real miracle of his character. Not that he was born from love, but that he learned to keep loving after he understood how fragile everything really is. In the end, Darwin's awareness becomes his offering to the world, a way of seeing that doesn't end in despair. He accepts that life will always be absurd, unfair, and impermanent. But instead of retreating, he steps forward. He looks at the mess and says softly, "I still love you." That is the essence of awareness. Not knowing everything, but knowing enough to choose kindness anyway. And when he finally closes his eyes at night, after all the noise and laughter and questions have faded, Darwin feels the quiet hum of the universe around him. Imperfect, unfinished, alive. He smiles, not because everything makes sense, but because it doesn't have to. Awareness, after all, is not about finding peace in perfection. It's about finding peace in truth. And Darwin, in his quiet, radiant way, has always known how to do that. Darwin Watterson began in water, and in a way, he never left it. Even when he grew legs, found a family, and started walking through the bright chaos of Elmore, the rhythm of water stayed inside him. Calm, flowing, patient, forgiving. He is a creature of tides, not boundaries. Every emotion he feels moves like a current. Sometimes gentle, sometimes overwhelming, but always in motion. If Gumball is the storm, Darwin is the ocean beneath it. Deep, constant, reflective, and alive. His heart doesn't beat in thuds, it moves in waves. The ocean within Darwin is both his origin and his philosophy. It's what keeps him from hardening, from losing his softness in a world that celebrates noise. He was born in stillness, in glass, in containment. And yet, his spirit was always bigger than his bowl. That bowl was the first version of the world. Limited, familiar, safe. But even as a fish, Darwin looked beyond the glass. He could see the shapes of the people he loved, blurry but bright. And when he took his first step outside, dripping and gasping, he didn't just escape the water. He carried it with him. He carried the calm, the acceptance, the way water touches everything without holding it. In the origins, when Darwin learns to breathe air, it isn't a rejection of what he was. It's an expansion. His life doesn't move from one element to another, it deepens. Even after he becomes fully part of the Watterson family, that ocean still echoes inside him. It's there in the way he listens, in the way he absorbs the moods of others, in the way he flows around conflict instead of crashing into it. He doesn't resist people, he surrounds them. That's how water heals, not by force, but by contact. But water isn't only gentle, it remembers everything it touches. The ocean within Darwin carries memory. Every argument, every laughter, every silence. He feels deeply because he holds deeply. And that's the beauty and the burden of being him. His empathy isn't just emotional, it's elemental. It floods through him without filter. When someone is hurt, he feels the undertow of it. When someone is happy, he rises with their tide. Sometimes that sensitivity leaves him exhausted, but he wouldn't trade it. To him, feeling everything is better than feeling nothing. In the limit and the words, his emotional current becomes strength. Where others drown in rage or confusion, Darwin becomes the still surface that reflects without distorting. When Nicole's temper threatens to break the family apart, it's Darwin's tears that cool the air. When Gumball's words cut too sharply, Darwin's silence becomes a mirror. He doesn't need to shout to be heard. His quiet carries weight, the way the deep ocean carries gravity. It pulls others back towards themselves. Sometimes, though, the ocean within Darwin overflows. In The Gift, when his kindness is taken for granted, his calm ripples into sadness. The pressure of always being the peaceful, one builds like waves against glass. He smiles less. His laughter becomes thinner, more distant. You can see it in his eyes, that soft ache of someone who has given too much of himself and doesn't know how to stop. It's not anger, it's erosion. Even the ocean needs rest. But what's remarkable is how he recovers. He doesn't close himself off. He returns to flow, to forgiveness, to presence. His water clears again. He teaches that stillness is not about never breaking. It's about always returning. Darwin's connection to water isn't just symbolic, it's sensory. Watch how he moves through space. His body language has no sharp edges. Even when he's running, it looks like gliding. His laughter bubbles instead of bursts. His speech ripples instead of cuts. He is rhythm embodied. The pace of life that isn't rushed, but constant. When everyone around him spirals into chaos, he remains centered because he remembers what water knows. That motion doesn't always mean progress, and stillness isn't the same as stagnation. In The Kids and the Party, when Gumball grows restless trying to prove adulthood or fit in, Darwin drifts. He doesn't resist the current of change, but he doesn't force it either. He allows life to happen. That allowance, that quiet acceptance of impermanence, is the secret of his peace. He doesn't cling to what was or panic about what's coming. He exists fully in the in-between, like the moment between waves. That's what makes him timeless. The ocean within Darwin is also a reflection of his capacity for transformation. Water changes form constantly, liquid, vapor, ice, yet it's always the same substance. Darwin's identity works the same way. He's brother, son, friend, student, sometimes fool, sometimes sage, but beneath every role is the same current of love. His adaptability isn't the loss of self, it's the realization that the self was never fixed to begin with. He can be anything because he's already everything. In the void, when reality collapses and the forgotten threaten to disappear, Darwin's calm becomes a form of faith. He doesn't fight the unknown, he embraces it. The ocean within him recognizes the infinite, that sense of vastness beyond comprehension. He knows that fear comes from trying to define what can't be defined. So he lets go, he floats in uncertainty and calls it peace. That's not detachment. It's understanding. It's what water would do. His relationship with Gumball mirrors this philosophy perfectly. Gumball is fire, impulsive, creative, consuming. He burns hot and fast. Darwin cools him, not by extinguishing him, but by shaping his flame. Together they become weather, balance in motion. Gumball creates waves, Darwin carries them. They don't cancel each other out. They complete each other's cycle. The storm always returns to the ocean, and the ocean always gives birth to the storm again. Darwin's emotional intelligence, that fluid, effortless empathy, often goes unrecognized because it isn't loud. But that's its strength. Like the ocean, it works invisibly. It sustains without demanding attention. He doesn't lecture or instruct, he absorbs and transforms. Every person in his life becomes softer after meeting him. Even the angriest, the strangest, the cruelest. Darwin's presence changes them. The way time changes shorelines. Slowly, inevitably, kindly. There's an episode called The Origins Part 2, where Darwin finally takes his first steps on land. That moment isn't just physical evolution, it's spiritual metaphor. He doesn't leave the ocean behind. He carries it inside him. Every time he laughs, every time he forgives, every time he looks at the world with wonder instead of judgment, that's the water speaking. The ocean didn't lose him. It learned to walk through him. In the rerun and the disaster, when time loops and endings repeat, Darwin's inner ocean keeps him steady. The universe can collapse, but his calm remains. He doesn't panic when everything resets because he understands cycles. He's lived them since the moment he first swam in circles inside a bowl. To him, repetition isn't imprisonment, it's rhythm. The world ends, begins, and ends again, and still he floats. That's what peace looks like in a universe of chaos. The ability to flow again and again without losing your shape. Sometimes, though, Darwin's depth isolates him. People misunderstand his serenity for simplicity. They don't realize that still waters can run deepest. They don't see how much thought, pain, and awareness ripple beneath his smiles. But Darwin never tries to correct them. He doesn't need recognition to stay true. His understanding of himself is too wide for validation. He knows that the ocean doesn't need to explain its calm to the wind. As he grows older, Darwin's ocean becomes his refuge. When the noise of Elmore overwhelms him, he retreats into quiet, not as escape, but as recalibration. He listens to the small sounds, the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of a clock, the murmur of his family's voices in another room. Those sounds are like ripples in still water, reminders that life continues even when it's calm. In those moments, Darwin reconnects to the rhythm that made him. He remembers that peace isn't the absence of chaos. It's the ability to move through it gently. At night, when the world dims and the house falls silent, Darwin sometimes dreams of the ocean, not as the bowl he left behind, but as a boundless blue that stretches forever. He isn't swimming, he's floating, looking up at the stars reflected on the surface. He can't tell if he's in the sky or the sea, and it doesn't matter. Everything feels connected, infinite, serene. When he wakes, he carries that calm into the day. He doesn't talk about the dream. He doesn't need to. The ocean within him has no language, but presence. Darwin Watterson's heart is not a vessel. It's a tide. It moves in and out of everything, touching, healing, reflecting. He doesn't resist the world's madness. He lets it flow through him until it settles. And when the storms pass, when the laughter fades and the house grows quiet, the ocean within him remains, still, deep, alive. A reminder that peace isn't something you find outside yourself. It's something you carry. At the end of everything, after the noise fades, after the laughter echoes into quiet, after the strange loops of Elmore fold back into themselves, there is a stillness. And in that stillness, there is light. Not the blinding, heroic kind. Not the kind that demands attention or promises perfection. It's a small light, soft and patient, glowing in the heart of Darwin Watterson. It's what's left after every story resets, after every mistake is forgiven, After every tear has fallen, the light that remains. Darwin's light is not something he was given. It's something he became. It's the residue of all the love he's felt, all the laughter he's shared, all the forgiveness he's practiced. It's what happens when you live your entire life without armor. Would you let the world touch you completely and still decide to stay kind? His light is not untouched by darkness. It's defined by it. Every hurt, every heartbreak, every moment of doubt becomes part of its warmth. The cracks are what make it shine. In the origins, when Darwin takes his first breath of air, his light begins as curiosity. The simple glow of a new soul discovering existence. By the limit, it grows into empathy. By the words and the bros, it matures into understanding. And by the finale, it becomes something cosmic. A quiet faith that love and connection can outlast even the collapse of the universe. Darwin's light doesn't flicker because it's untouchable. It flickers because it's alive. It breathes with him. It dims when he's tired, brightens when he laughs, and never fully disappears, even when the world feels cold. The light that remains in Darwin isn't metaphorical. It's behavioral. You can see it in how he moves through the world, the way he pauses before speaking, the way he listens with his whole body, the way he lets other people's emotions flow through him without resistance. That's light in motion. It's not loud or dramatic, but it changes everything it touches. When Darwin walks into a room, the chaos slows. When he speaks, even the nonsense makes sense. When he forgives, everyone feels cleaner, lighter. His light doesn't demand attention. It simply fills space until the darkness has nowhere left to rest. In the disaster and the rerun, when reality itself begins to fall apart, Darwin's light is what anchors the story. Gumball panics, the world bends, and time stops meaning anything. But Darwin doesn't lose himself. He keeps smiling, keeps believing, keeps loving. His calm becomes the one true constant in a universe built on absurdity. And when everything resets, it's as if his light survives the reboot. As if his heart carries memory through dimensions. That's what love does in Elmore. It becomes metaphysical. It transcends logic, continuity, even plot. Darwin's light is not about denial. He sees the same darkness everyone else does. The cruelty, the confusion, the absurd unfairness of things. But he looks at it differently. Where others see chaos, he sees complexity. Where others see endings, he sees transformation. His optimism is not ignorance, it's courage. It's the conscious choice to keep the light on, even when the world makes it hard. In The Gift, when his generosity is taken advantage of, he still smiles. Not because it didn't hurt, but because he refuses to let pain make him smaller. That's the miracle of his light. It survives without needing to win. In The Kids, when he faces the inevitability of growing up, his light shifts again, less bright, more steady. Childhood joy becomes mature acceptance. He begins to understand that change doesn't mean loss, and that the people we love don't leave us just because life moves on. His glow softens into something timeless. The light of memory, of moments kept alive not by perfection, but by care. That's what makes Darwin so quietly profound. He doesn't try to hold on to anything forever. He just keeps illuminating what's in front of him until it's gone, and then he moves to the next thing that needs light. His bond with Gumball, above all, is the prism through which this light refracts. Gumball burns with energy, always pushing forward, always demanding meaning. Darwin reflects the energy, dispersing it into color. He turns Gumball's chaos into beauty. Their friendship is the fusion of fire and water, sound and silence, impulse and empathy. Together they create something complete. And when Gumball falters, when his confidence cracks or his arrogance blinds him, it's Darwin's light that steadies him. A constant reminder that being loved doesn't depend on being perfect. But Darwin's light also belongs to the viewer. That's the secret of the amazing world of Gumball. Beneath the wild animation, the surreal gags, and the constant absurdity, Darwin's presence is an emotional translation for us. He feels so that we don't have to filter it. He reminds us that sensitivity isn't weakness, that laughter can coexist with fear, and that love can survive in the strangest places. The light that remains in Darwin is the same light that remains in anyone who refuses to grow cynical. It's the hope that even if the world is ridiculous, kindness still matters. There are moments, especially near the end of the series, where Darwin seems to step outside the story itself. Moments of quiet observation where he looks around as if he's aware of the cartoon he's in. But there's no fear in that awareness, just calm. He knows that even if the world resets tomorrow, even if continuity erases everything, what he's felt will still exist somewhere. His light doesn't depend on permanence. It lives in the act of loving, not in the memory of being loved. That's the kind of immortality he practices, the immortality of gentleness. When night falls in Elmore and the house finally stills, Darwin is usually the last one awake. Gumball snores softly on the couch. Anais' lamp glows faintly under her door. Nicole and Richard breathe in rhythm upstairs. Darwin sits in the dim living room, listening to the hum of quiet machines, watching moonlight stretch across the floor. He doesn't feel lonely. He feels connected. Every heartbeat in the house is a note in the same song. He closes his eyes and lets the silence surround him. Somewhere deep inside, that small, eternal light pulses once more. Not brighter, not dimmer, just steady. The light that remains is not the promise of happiness. It's the endurance of goodness. It's what stays when the laughter stops, when the stories end, when the screen fades to black. Darwin's light is what tells us that it was all worth it. Every mistake, every tear, every absurd joke that made no sense. Because love, when lived fully, doesn't vanish. It becomes atmosphere. It becomes memory. It becomes everything soft that stays with you long after the credits roll. Darwin Watterson doesn't conquer the world. He doesn't change it. He simply loves it until it feels less broken. And in that simple act of seeing, of forgiving, of remaining gentle, he becomes something the world rarely celebrates, but always needs. A reminder that light doesn't need to be loud to last. It just needs to be real. And so the philosophy of Darwin Watterson ends not with a revelation, but with quiet. A small smile in the dark. A heartbeat echoing underwater. A light that never stops glowing, even when no one is watching. Because in the end, that's what Darwin has always taught. That life, no matter how absurd, deserves to be loved. And love, no matter how fragile, always finds a way to remain.